Deep within the unyielding rock, a new civilization takes root. 100 days ago, a lone hand began carving a destiny, shaping an empire hidden from the light. They call it the Sunless Empire. Today, that empire stands at its nascent heart, on the threshold of what may one day become an impregnable bastion. For now, there is only this, and it's far from over. What you're about to see is just the beginning. Welcome to the first glimpse of a world I've been building, one stone at a time. In this video, I'll take you through the foundational elements of the Sunless Empire. It's a fortress I designed for both survival and defense in a world that never stops pushing back. You'll see the strategic choke point of the bridgeway, the early comforts I carved out for my settlers' sleeping quarters, and the humble beginnings of a project that has tested me from day one. But no story begins in a vacuum. Here's what set the stage. This journey began after the game's pivotal update 15, which introduced smarter enemies and deadlier siege weapons. I'm playing on the stable, non-experimental branch with survival hard mode fully enabled. I started with just 3 settlers in a brutal mountain biome. From the very beginning, it wasn't just about building, it was about enduring. Every decision I made became a test of strategy, resilience, and sheer will. After surveying the landscape, I finally settled on a promising site to begin excavation. A few stubborn trees stood in the way, so I marked them for removal to clear the path. With the ground unobstructed, I broke earth on what would become the main entryway to the Sunless Empire. With the first phase of excavation complete, I set my settlers to work expanding the main chamber. Since our starting supplies were dropped in the center of the map, I established a temporary stockpile near the settlement's entrance for easier access. As night fell, I ordered the construction of 3 hay beds, giving each settler a place to rest after a long day's labor. In the early hours of day 3, I had my settlers continue mining another section of the main chamber. Later that morning, a shrine to the Oak's Brethren was constructed, giving them a place to worship and reflect. I chose not to build one for the restitutionists this time because in my previous 100-day series, I focused entirely on them, and even converted the Oak's Brethren. To help meet their recreation needs, I also placed a backgammon table in the chamber. By afternoon, I had campfire set up, allowing my settlers to prepare proper meals instead of relying solely on raw ingredients. The next morning, I had a basic research table built to help my settlers begin advancing their technology. I also placed a wooden torch to provide light and warmth during the night, along with a second shrine to prevent them from crowding around a single place of worship. Around midday, I adjusted their schedule, assigning 6 hours for sleep, 6 for leisure, and 12 for work. Before the day ended, I designated another section of the main chamber for excavation. The following morning, a few of my settlers were starving, so I traded some of our surplus ale and seeds for prepared meals. Looking ahead, I began reshaping the terrain by removing this slope here, another one nearby, and a small portion of the mountain to clear space for future expansion. Rain fell in the next day, but it didn't stop my settlers from working on a side entrance along the mountain. This new passage would serve as an access point, allowing them to reach a small garden area on the mountainside from within the settlement. Today, I finally sealed off the entrance to the main chamber, enclosing my settlers within the mountain using temporary walls and a wooden door. Later that day, a lone traveler arrived, seeking refuge from a group of bothersome bards. I agreed without hesitation and welcomed her into the settlement. Her name was Estrelda. The early part of the day was uneventful, aside from the continued work on the side entrance and the arrival of a negotiator at the edge of the map. With nothing to offer in trade, I chose to ignore him. The real progress came with the completion of Research Level 2, which unlocked the Advanced Research table and opened up more of the technology tree. If you've seen my recent videos, you probably know where this is heading. And if you guessed beekeeping, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what I started preparing for today. Estrelda had a few tasks she clearly disliked, so I adjusted her job priorities accordingly, along with those of the other settlers to keep everything running smoothly. Later that day, with the threat of a raid looming, I removed the external ladder access and replaced it with an internal one just in time. As the raiders approached, I noticed a new addition, the Scale of Balance. Small touch, but a clever one. For the defense, I positioned my archers on the mountainside and placed melee units near the door. I skipped over much of the battle, but I managed to take down 2 raiders. Mehenilda was knocked out, but thankfully survived. Then came the surprise. The raiders can build ladders. Smarter enemies indeed. Props to the developers for that update. As for Lena, I turned her into a prisoner despite having no real means to support one. Why? I couldn't tell you. Just don't ask. Now, I've also gone to put my temporary stockpile in the cave so that my settlers don't have to keep on running out to get things. And again, yet another uneventful day. Literally spending the whole day transferring items from the old storage pile into the new one, and moving the dead bodies to the trash pile. Later that night, I learned defensive structures so that I could change my wooden door into something much stronger to resist the enemies better. Today was largely uneventful, as most of my settlers were still recovering from the recent raid. The only notable progress was organizing the settlement, hauling supplies from the old stockpile outside into the newly designated one inside the mountain. Today was focused on restoring our food stocks. While hunting continued in the background, I assigned Estrelda to fish at the nearby pond to diversify our supplies. I also placed a butcher's table to process the fresh meat gathered from the hunts. While more organizing continued in the background, I replaced the ladder with a staircase to allow my hauling animals to move more easily between levels of the mountain. It was already late by the time I finalized the next mining project for my settlers. This task should keep them occupied through the rest of summer. I began excavating the sleeping quarters for my settlers today, marking out the layout of each room using the mining tool. While this initial design shows 5x6 rooms, it won't stay that way. Eventually, I'll be switching to a more compact 3x7 layout. It may seem small, but I believe it will still be enough for their needs. I made the necessary adjustments today, and later on I would realize I had measured the hallways wrong. So I'll be making more changes later in the video. I know, digging out rooms already takes twice as long as building them, and now I have to deal with adjustments too. But bear with me, it will all be worth it in the end. I hope. I also placed a stonemason's bench to begin producing limestone blocks. This will be the main material for the walls of the Empire. Later in the afternoon, a citizen of Buckland found Blake barking up the wrong tree. I let him rest and heal inside the settlement. But you'll be working for your share, no freeloaders. Aside from continuing the remodeling of the sleeping chambers to the 3x7 layout I mentioned earlier, not much else happened today. Well, I did make some adjustments to Blake's schedule, but I won't get into the nitty-gritty. There are more important things to focus on. And speaking of important things, the next day I built 2 smelting furnaces to begin producing iron ingots. These will be used to upgrade my doors, making them more durable against future raids. It was another quiet day spent continuing the adjustments to the sleeping chambers I mentioned earlier. And since this is the Sunless Empire, there will be plenty of moments like this. To avoid repeating myself, I'll just show snippets of the work being done on the sleeping chambers on day 19, day 20, day 21, and day 22. On day 23, I decided to take a quick break from the constant clanging of picks on stone by following, well, I'm not even going to try to pronouncing her first name. It rained the next day, and I had a few skips built along the side of the mountain. To counter the production debuff caused by the rain, I added stick floors above them to act as makeshift roofs. Today was a gloomy, rainy one, so everyone stayed inside, working on organizing stockpiles and catching up on research. Later in the day, I finally completed 2 of the sleeping chambers. It's not much, but it'll do just fine. To make them functional, I added a wooden hay bed and a brazier to keep the settlers warm. The next morning, it was back to excavating. I once again used the mining tool to mark out the layout for the sleeping chambers. And that work continued through day 26 and day 27. Eventually, I ran out of stone blocks, so I had to do some extra mining outside the mountain, targeting areas where the rock tiles weren't impure or mixed with soil. Excavation was still the top priority on day 28. In fact, the delay in construction materials gave me the time to rethink the design. Instead of placing 1 horizontal chamber here, I split it into 2 vertical chambers, each with access to a corridor behind the rooms. On the morning of day 29, I marked out even more chambers to be mined. That brings the total to 7 on this floor. Though I'll say this now, things will look very different on the floors below. You are in for a treat, I'll tell you that much. Later in the day, another settler appeared at the edge of the map, looking for a safe haven. Claire had the passion for mining and smithing, and that fits right in with what Buckland is all about. So I welcomed her without hesitation. The following day, I laid down stone block flooring in the next 2 chambers, as well as in the main halls, just to give everything a cleaner, more finished look. Since I ran out of materials again, I went ahead and mined more of the pure limestone deposits to boost my output. I also decided to double my limestone block production, so I placed another stonemason's bench right across the first one. It's not just my resources like limestone and wood that have taken a hit while building the Sunless Empire. My food supply has started to suffer too, so the following day, I sent out a hunting party to gather more food. And once again, someone showed up at the edge of the map, fleeing from a group of cannibals. Being the great and generous leader that I am, of course I said yes, and welcomed Isoletta to Buckland. Day 33 was rather uneventful. Aside from organizing stockpiles and producing limestone blocks in the background, I spent most of the time adjusting my settlers' job priorities. Aside from a visit from Mr. Negotiator, this was yet another uneventful day. Minutes before the raiders arrived, I finished researching wooden weaponry, unlocking the Bowyer stable. Unless the developers seriously nerf it, ranged weapons are still the best way to defend your kingdom in this game. I haven't seen siege weapons in action yet, but that's something for later. Right now, we had a raid to deal with. 10 enemies appeared at the edge of the map. The horn sounded and I rushed everyone to battle stations. I was undermanned with only 3 bowmen and 2 infantry units guarding the door. All I could do was hope we'd hold out long enough to see another sunrise. Thankfully, Estrelda finished crafting a bow just in time. It was flimsy, but it would have to do. With that, Blake stepped up and joined the defense as a fourth bowman. The first of the raiders came into view and my archers opened fire without hesitation. 1 down, 9 to go. Then the second dropped. But most of them had already reached the front door. I micromanaged my archers, focusing fire on the ones pounding at the entrance. That's 3. They broke through and Estrelda went down, unconscious. I don't know if the reinforced door got nerfed, but it sure didn't hold like it used to. Still, one by one, they fell. We held the line. We survived. I didn't take any prisoners. First, because I simply can't afford to keep them. And second, because let's be honest, I would have killed them anyway. The following morning, it was back to working on the sleeping chambers. That pretty much carried on for the entire day. Day 37, and it's the first day of winter. Pretty uneventful, to say the least. Nothing much happened aside from micromanaging my settlers' food preparation and adjusting their food and stimulant intake. Now, what was it I used to say? Was it, when in doubt, just mine it out? No? Well, I guess that's what I'm saying now, because there really wasn't much else going on today aside from that. And that pretty much carried over into the next day, and into the next one as well. By late afternoon, all 3 sleeping chambers had been fully mined out. That brings the total to 7, perfectly matching my 7 settlers. This small area between the chambers that I'm mining out is going to be the main stairwell. I'm not sure yet if it'll be the only one leading to the main entrance, but I guess you'll just have to stick around and find out. By day 42, I had researched crossbow 1. In my opinion, crossbows are the only S+ tier weapon you'll ever need for defense. Better than a bow? Buy a million voxels. Change my mind, I dare you. One thing I might have overlooked though, is that crafting crossbows requires a settler with a carpentry level of 20. It's not too hard to reach, but it will take some time. And apparently, there's a new variation of the mechanical component. Looks like I'll need 3 of the wooden ones per crossbow. And to make those, I built a woodworking bench around this corner here. For the rest of the day, I marked some trees to be cut down to replenish our supply of wood and sticks in the stockpile. Early the following morning, I started working on my next big project. Do you guys remember how in movies, whenever there's a cave scene, there's always a bridge hanging high above the lowest depths, stretching as far as the eye can see? I'm bringing that kind of design into this build. But I'll take it slow, one level at a time. I don't want to trigger a massive collapse. For now, I'm calling it the Death Bridge. In a nutshell, this will serve as a choke point for raiders. The idea is they all funnel through here, only to get picked off by crossbows from all 4 sides. I mean, if you're not defending like this, what are you even doing? Oh, and another settler showed up asking for salvation. Perfect timing, honestly. I could definitely use more hands to help push this project forward. While Project Deathbridge continued in the background, I also took the time to finish up the sleeping chambers by laying down floor tiles and building bookcases to properly store my chronicles, textbooks, and theses. By midday, I had to go out hunting too, since a few of my settlers were on the verge of starvation. All the tasks from yesterday basically carried over into today. The only new notable thing I did was to assign Nothelm as the kingdom's carpenter. I've essentially put him into a production loop to train his carpentry skill up to level 20, or as high as I need it to be. It was early in the morning when the cannibals chasing Mordred finally arrived. 12 enemies appeared at the edge of the map, hungry for human flesh. The horn sounded, and I immediately drafted my archers to their battle stations on the side of the mountain. Moments later, the first few raiders came into range. They approached from a strange angle, which I think still worked to my advantage. Within seconds, the main group closed in. I quickly repositioned my archers to overlook the main entrance. I managed to take down one of their archers, and while that may not seem like much, believe me, it made a difference. I tried my best to micromanage the defense. pausing constantly and prioritizing any raider attacking the door. But it still wasn't enough. The raiders broke through my reinforced door again. How Mehenilda keeps surviving these attacks is beyond me. She always ends up unconscious but never dead, and for that I am grateful. Eventually, my archers picked them off one by one until the battle was won. 2 raiders survived the fight, but neither lived long enough to tell the tale. With the battle over and the loot collected, the rest of the day was spent organizing the stockpiles. Once the stockpiles were organized and the settlers had time to recuperate, it was back to focusing on Project Deathbridge. While work on Project Deathbridge continued in the background, I also decided to add more skeps, bringing the total to 10. Hopefully that will be enough to get us through next year's winter. Spring finally arrived and I decided to turn this area into a makeshift garden. I began mining out the rocks and ore, then replaced them with the dirt tiles. Today, I reinforced the death bridge by building additional limestone block walls and adding limestone block arches between them. It was an uneventful day, with most of the morning spent working on the makeshift garden. While going over the different construction tasks I had queued up for my settlers, I noticed we were completely out of wood. So, the day was dedicated to chopping down trees to restock our supply of wood and sticks. I also had the settlers mine out the last few patches of dirt beneath the death bridge, and fill in the final row of dirt tiles in the makeshift garden. The tasks from yesterday carried over into today. I also began farming, planting cabbages and barley. I didn't have all the seeds I needed just yet, but fortunately a merchant arrived later that night with exactly what I was looking for. I traded a good portion of my inventory, and yes, even my cat, for seeds along with a few and other essentials like construction materials, coins, and food. The next morning, I dedicated some time to actually farming the cabbage and barley plots. After that, I shifted my focus back to Project Deathbridge, since everything from the previous mining task had already been cleared out. I also started transitioning from wooden hay beds to quality linen beds for some added comfort. Surely that's one way to keep my settlers happy, right? Just did a quick check on Nothelm's carpentry progress. 17. Alright, good. Just a few more to go, and I can finally start producing crossbows. Now, if I really want to complete Project Deathbridge, I'll need to start laying out the sleeping chambers on the next level. What you're seeing here is essentially the blueprint for where the doors to the chambers will go, which means I'll be building 10 bedrooms on this floor. I was ambushed early in the morning on day 57. 13 raiders appeared at the edge of the map. Would Mehenilda survive another attack? Let's find out. As the horn sounded, my settlers rushed to their usual battle stations. I'll tell you what, if Mehenilda finishes that door before the raiders get here, she's making it out for sure. The first enemy came into range just as Mehenilda was about to place the final piece of the door. This looked promising. With the second reinforced door complete and only one limestone wall left to go, I finally felt a sense of security. At least I wouldn't have to worry too much about my settlers' safety. Now it was just a matter of hunting down the remnants. Later in the day, my settlers managed to gather enough hay to finish few skeps that had been sitting in the construction queue for a while. I noticed a missing voxel on the upper layer, and that could only mean one thing: collapse. Luckily for me, it was just a minor one this time. Still, I'll need to be a lot more careful moving forward. Oh, and some wild flax showed up nearby. Finally, I can harvest it and start planting some of my own. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but this area is where my archers will be positioned whenever a raid hits. You might not see the full picture right now, but you will soon. So this is basically what it's going to look like. Of course, I still need to mine out the remaining dirt and limestone voxels to get a clear view of the bridge, but we'll get to that later. The following day, I gathered more wild flax out in the wilderness. With some linen now in stock, I was able to craft another quality bed and make another chamber available for a settler to move into. I also began expanding into another sleeping chamber on the floor below. The day was uneventful. I just continued working on the sleeping chamber. While I was checking the research tree, the first batch of barley was harvested. A few skeps were also completed in the background. Today, aside from restocking my stockpiles, I finished the other section of the room where my archers will be stationed. If you know what this kind of room is generally called, or if you've got a name for it of your own, let me know in the comments below. I started working on completing the look of the main chamber of the Death Bridge. The plan is for it to be 2 floors high and overlooking all the levels below. Or at least, that's the idea. I just hope I can pull it off without too many collapses along the way. And just in the nick of time, another settler showed up asking to join Buckland. With this massive project underway, of course I had to say yes. And here it is. The thing I feared most when digging under mountains. A collapse. Though, thankfully, it's still somewhat fixable. I think. To cut the day short, I spent the rest of it continuing work on the second floor of the main chamber. And that continued to day 67. And day 68. Now that Nothelm's carpentry skill has reached 20, I can finally start producing crossbows and upgrade my archers into arbolists. Raiding parties should be much easier to handle from here on out. Unfortunately, I hadn't crafted any yet, and another raiding party had already reached the borders of Buckland. As always, organizing the spoils of war came right after the battle. I also finished replacing all the wooden hay beds with quality linen beds. And finally, the first crossbow was completed. I've now switched most of my settlers' weapons from bows to crossbows. To make things feel a bit more bougie, and since mountain dwellings are usually associated with dwarves, I added golden braziers to each of the sleeping chambers. I'm still debating whether to carry that detail over to as many items as possible or keep it subtle. That morning, more mining work continued in the main chamber. I also placed weapon racks in each sleeping chamber just to add a bit of flair. Later that night, I got the word that Buckland is flourishing. More settlers are being drawn to it, and with that comes the risk of attracting unwanted attention from other settlements. The day started off pretty uneventful, with most of my time spent adjusting my settlers' job priorities. With only one voxel left to mine out, it was time to add more support to help prevent the kind of collapses I've dealt with before. Once the final support was in place, I queued up more dirt and limestone to be mined, giving the chamber a more finished and cohesive look. And that work carried on throughout day 73. By midday of day 74, the mining was finally done. I placed in limestone blocks to fill in the remaining gaps, completing the ceiling support for the main chamber. And here's what it looks like now. I honestly like the direction this is going. If you do too, then I guess a little like on the video wouldn't hurt, right? Now go get on liking. Next up was building some sort of barbican to help slow down raiders before they could break into the stronghold. No surprise here, another collapse. But nothing we can't fix. Work on the barbican continued throughout the day as well. And day 76. I even added grated floors so my arbolists can shoot through them in case any raiders manage to get inside. For the rest of the day, I focus on making the main chamber a bit neater and more polished. That work carried on into today as well. Today, I had to create a new access point to the makeshift garden since I'm planning to close off the old one. and that task ended up taking another full day to complete. Today, however, I focus on the main entrance. That also reminded me that I'll need to unlock Research 3 from the tech tree so I can start writing theses and eventually unlock the portcullis. And once again, that task took another full day to finish. Since I needed more space for the advanced research table, I started working on creating rooms in the basement. Aside from that, I also cleaned up the main chamber by removing unnecessary voxels. And that work continued into the next day. More room expansions were done on day 85, alongside the ongoing work on the main chamber that I assigned a couple of days ago. While I was in the middle of converting another room into a sleeping chamber, 16 raiders rushed the outskirts of Buckland. As a self-proclaimed veteran war tactician, I moved my soldiers into their designated battle positions. Now, I should point out that all of my archers have been promoted to arbolists. So, I had a good feeling that I would be mowing through this wave without much trouble. But hey, hold on to your pants, let's watch and see. While waiting for the enemy to arrive, I had a little fun with some of these critters roaming around, if you know what I mean. Loose! 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 They took so long to get here, I ended up killing 8 polecats just to pass the time. But enough lollygagging, time to get serious. I missed this. And once again, no raider survived the aftermath. You already know what comes next after an incursion, so I'll go ahead and skip to the following day. Today I went back to mining out additional rooms on the basement level. By day 88, I was finally able to place down the blueprint for the advanced research table. The next day, I focused on the left side of the main chamber, mining out dirt and limestone block walls to give it a cleaner look. I've also unlocked the portcullis, but I'll still need some more mechanical components to build it, so that's something I'll be working towards as well. Since I needed space for the blacksmith, I marked out more voxels on the basement level to be cleared. I marked the last few dirt voxels for mining and eventually replaced them with the limestone block walls. And with just a few walls left to finish, here's how it turned out.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
I know, believe me, I didn't plan for it to look like this. It just happened, I swear. Now that I finally had some space for it, I placed the blueprint for the blacksmith so I can start producing mechanical components. Not just for the portcullis, but for any future buildings or items that might need them as well. Next, I started carving out the main entrance to make space for the portcullis once it's ready. Once again, I focused on mining out the excess layers of voxels to clean up the look of Project Deathbridge, all while actively customizing the production queue at the blacksmith. Today, I took a step back and watched my settlers finish all the mining tasks in the basement level. Food supplies were starting to run low as well, so I sent out a hunting party to gather more for the settlement. I started transferring some of the existing structures from the bridge into the halls and rooms of the basement to keep them safe from potential raider attacks once the bridge is open to the outside world. For the rest of the day, I focused on mining out additional rooms in the basement level and transferring structures whenever possible. And that work continued into the next day. I also finally got to place down the portcullis. As I approached day 100, I had to put some of my other planned projects on hold. My focus now was to finish the ones already in progress, like the main chamber and the extra rooms. So that's probably all you'll see until day 100, unless something monumental happens, like this. I swear, I've loved the portcullis ever since it was added to the game. It was love at first sight. And my settlers were starving today. I sent out another hunting party to gather food. And for the rest of the day, I mined it away. by the end of day 98, I had mostly finished mining out the rooms, with just a few left to go. And what's this? One last ambush? I see. Let's go get to it. 17 looters arrived and 17 met their end. On day 99, I focused on finishing the 2 remaining rooms here. And finally, on day 100, I placed the walls to complete the rooms, making them available sleeping chambers for any settler who wants to join our cause. Speaking of, welcome, David. Come on in, hurry, great things await.